The purpose of our trip to the Macaw Cultural Center on the tip of the Washington Peninsula, close to the archaeological site of Ozette, a pre-contact Macaw village buried by a mudslide 400 to 600 years ago, was a pre-contact blanket, the Ozette blanket. Excavation notes based on visual observations from 1970 describe the condition and materials used to weave the blanket. Quote, included seed fluff of cattail or fireweed used to augment dog hair, in common use by some Northwest Coast weavers, but not previously known among the macaws. Eventually, the mix was identified as feathers, cedar bark, and moss, spun with animal hair, almost surely dog. Close quotes. Over time, different researchers produced different conclusions as to the blanket's contents. Now, we were there to use electron microscopy and ion beam lasers to penetrate and photograph samples of the blanket in the hope of clearing up the confusion.
This is just the basket retagging that we're doing, where you can see the corrosion.
Aluminum, yeah.
Yeah, on the aluminum, it is reacting with it over, these artifacts are over, well, they've had the tags.
79 to 74 and stuff like that, I guess. Yeah.
So from 1970 to 1981.
Oh, that's wood, but this says string.
It's cedar bark.
Cedar bark.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Okay.
Yeah, he was down on Jay was the...
There was a time when we were communicating quite regularly, but then
Okay, so if I take this piece,
a fraction of what we used to be.
that's got a lot of nice fragments in it, and hairy bits sticking out.
I know.
Let's see what else we can do.
Here
There's a piece of,
fragment tip.
that looks like plant material.
That's what it would be if this doodad wasn't.
There we are, we'll take that piece.
Oh, okay.
That's more than.
Earlier date rather than a later date. So when you're going down in the levels, when you stop getting historics in your level, then that below becomes the undisturbed.
Mm-hmm.
So like when we did the over there at the Veterans Park, there's a point where you go down all these levels till you reach the sand, and then you're at that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those levels, we've seen a lot of plastic bags, pop can lids, real recent historics. And then it would get down to different levels of historics, like square nails and fun stuff. And then you get down to where there is no historics, and then they call that undisturbed midden, like near midden sites. Interesting, cool stuff. I love
Wickersham Museum. So this
But
is
it's
Judge
from,
Wickersham.
was that originally?
But originally it was given to this lawyer, Wickersham, who worked around here in the middle 1800s with the First Nations, and they gave him this blanket. And this blanket was one of his favourite blankets, and he had it on his chair all the time, so it's quite worn where he sat.
It's quite extraordinary.
But this is the one with 29 colours.
Well,
So
I know there's intermarriage with Nez Perce and stuff in the 1800s into this area, and even over in Victoria. I always wonder if there's some kind of people bringing stuff down from
and this is the one that's
inland.
missing.
Is this the same seat that...
Let you know exactly what to do. For security reasons, please do not leave your luggage or backpack unattended.
We are now examining the oldest known specimen of a northwest coast textile, the Ozette blanket. The blanket itself is too fragile to be exposed to any sampling processes, so we had to use sloughed-off pieces collected on the bottom of the exhibition case. Our first visual impression was that the blanket was made mainly from plant material. Under a light microscope, our initial impressions were confirmed. The main material appeared to be beaten and spun fine cedar bark or processed fireweed. There was evidence of fine strands of fireweed fluff and seeds, most likely used to give the inside of the blanket a soft, insulating layer. Scanning electron microscope analysis strengthened our first impressions and confirmed there was no evidence of any protein fiber in the mix. Speculation that there could have been dog hair present in the mix, but it would not have survived the low iron clay matrix, was not confirmed, although we did find dog hair well preserved in the same clay as the blanket in other samples to be revealed later. The spun cedar content of the blanket is culturally consistent with early observations, textiles, and blankets collected by Captain Cook and other explorers on the northwest coast in the 18th century. Cedar was, after all, the fabric of life for the Salish people. The next series of reports will discuss the findings produced by the microscopic analysis of plant and animal fiber fragment samples through to 12.